Hello everyone, I completed season 4 of Bridgerton. This was Sophie and Benedict season and I absolutely loved it. I did read the book An Offer from a Gentleman by Julia Quinn, on which this season is based, but I did feel like the show gave Sophie and Benedict's story more romance, more drama and depth. How their story plays out in the book versus how it happens in the show is actually quite different. And yes, I do think that the show did a better job in their adaptation of Sophie and Benedict's love story. There are going to be spoilers throughout this video, so if you have not completed the season, save this and come back later. In the book, the Be My Mistress moment is just as crucial as it was in the show to the story of Sophie and Benedict. Her decision to not be his mistress and his anger and frustration with her decision forms the basis of the second part of their story. She does not want to be his mistress because she does not want to have a child experience what she did growing up. His point of view is that that is the only practical way in which they can be together and he can take care of her. In the show, Benedict is portrayed as less angry with Sophie and more angry at the rigid rules of society. Also, the untimely death of Lord Kilmartin propels Benedict in the show to really reflect, realizing that he should be with the person that he loves. That does not happen in the book. In this way, the show really added more layers to the story. In this video, I also want to discuss a very fascinating historical figure named Hariette Wilson, who was a real-life prominent mistress in England during the Regency Era, so during the time in which Bridgerton is set. Hariette Wilson was the recognized and kept mistress of the Earl of Craven, and later she was a kept mistress of a duke. What made her so fascinating is that at the age of 36, she wrote and published a memoir that was quite scandalous for the time. It was first released in parts, and the demand for it was great. Crowds at the time literally had to be controlled because people were so desperate to get their hands on the latest issue. The Regency gentlemen's clubs were on edge, waiting to see who among them would be named each week. This definitely reminded me of the Whistledown Society Papers in Bridgerton. I read parts of Hariette Wilson's memoir and I want to discuss it in this video as it's very relevant to us when we consider Sophie and the life that was being presented to her if she were to become Benedict's, quote, kept mistress, unquote. The theme of secret relationships or love affairs outside of a marriage was explored this season, and there was a quiet yet impactful nod to this theme in the final episode on the Queen's dress. I'm so excited to see this painting on her dress. It's one of my favorite paintings because of its hidden meaning. This is a picture, and it's a picture of the 18th century painting of Jean-Honoré Fragonard titled The Swing. At first, the painting just looks like a playful woman on a swing, but it actually depicts her secret love affair with a man outside her marriage. She is the focal point of the painting. She lifts her leg at the top of the swing, and then we notice that there is a younger man in the bushes below her looking at her in awe and excitement. And we then realize he's actually kind of looking up her skirt and at her exposed ankle. Very erotic back in the day. In the background, there's an older man, presumably her husband, who holds on tightly to the ropes of the swing to which she is bound and controlled, like the dynamic of a marriage. But the artist has depicted the ropes as frayed and coming undone. Also, to heighten the illicit nature of this love affair in the painting, there is a statue of Cupid in the garden, the boy god of love, with his fingers to his lips as if to say, this is a secret. I love that this detail was added and included on the Queen's dress this season. I'm not sure if other people have picked up on this, but I was very excited to see it, and it really played up the topic that was explored this season. Before this book, I did not read any other Bridgerton books since the release of the show in 2020, season 1. I loved the show and I didn't feel the need to actually pick up the books, but part 1 of season 4 ended so abruptly. I really wanted to know what happened next before part 2 was released. It was just such a long wait. Sophie and Benedict's fictional historical romance happens from 1815 to 1817. Besides the race of Sophie, which Bridgerton is known for changing in their Netflix Netflix adaptations, there are other differences between the book and the show. On the show, Benedict explores his identity. He is a bisexual man. He's very charming, he's very creative, whereas in the book, Benedict is not a queer character. Also, his personality in the book is a lot more arrogant. He's quite dramatic, testy, and very passionate. In the show, the viewer is made aware very early that Benedict is an aspiring artist, but in the book, his artistic talents aren't known to anyone. In fact, it is Sophie in the book who informs his family that he is a talented artist because she saw his sketches. Also, the show incorporated many supporting storylines that we don't see in the book. I want to read the other Bridgerton books now to see how the show fused all these stories together. In this season, we had very compelling stories beside Sophie and Benedict's love story. The Queen dealt with loneliness and the importance of female friendships. Eloise dealt with the pressures of society as an unmarried woman. Francesca dealt with grief and loss, and Violet Bridgerton dealt with the topic of older generations navigating romance and pleasure while redefining widowhood. Also, the issue of treating workers with respect by paying them a fair and livable wage was explored. These are such important topics that added immense value to this season. Also, my favorite character, being the Queen, was created as a main character in the show. She's not featured in the book. Episode 1 really set up the Cinderella-style storyline for this season. An important difference is that Sophie in the book does not have a special family heirloom necklace as she does in the series. The Bridgerton costume design team explained that this was meant to tie into Sophie's Korean heritage for the show. The stone is amethyst, which was the stone of Korea at the time. It was so appropriate that the first episode was totally dedicated to the masquerade ball and the Cinderella-style meeting of Sophie and Benedict. In the book, their meeting serves as the backdrop to their epic romance. Many online journalists actually criticized part 1 and the Cinderella-style start to season 4 for being too, quote, predictable, unquote, and boring. And I was so taken aback by this critique of an age-old story. The 1950s modern Disney adaptation of the Cinderella story is the most well-known reference for us in pop culture. It has influenced many later adaptations in film. But the folk story itself has precursors that go back centuries and across continents. For example, there is a version of the story from the 1st century BC, when Greeks living in Egypt told the story of a girl who attracted a king with her shapely sandal. One of the other earliest versions of the story is found during the Chinese Tang dynasty. The details may vary, but here's a general outline. The Chinese fairy tale starts with a young girl named Yi Shen, who is mistreated by her stepmother. Yi Shen is described as beautiful, hardworking, and good. Her guardians in this version are a mystical fish and the spirit of her ancestors who make her dream come true. She wants to attend a festival. When Yi Shen attends the festival, she loses one of her golden slippers on her way home from the event. The golden slipper ends up in the hands of a king, and the shoe's small size intrigues him, considering it to be a sign of great female beauty. He demands to find the owner of the golden slipper. The story ends as we expect. The king rescues her from her very cruel stepfamily, and she becomes his queen. Many Asian countries have had their own versions of this tale, incorporating different details that reflect the religious, geographical, historical, and cultural context of the time. There are major Asian roots to the Cinderella story itself, so the fact that Korean-Australian actress Yerin Ha is the Asian lead for the Bridgerton Cinderella story this season makes it even more special. The Cinderella story seems to have arrived to Western Europe during the Renaissance. In 1635, a collection of fairy tales was published in Italy by Jean-Baptiste Basile. In 1697, French author Charles Perrault added several familiar details to the story in his book, creating the foundations for the contemporary Cinderella story, including the fairy godmother, the pumpkin-turned carriage, and the glass slipper. In contrast, the German version of the story that appeared in print in 1812 by the brothers Grimm is vengeful and very dark. Academics argue that the reason for the diffusion of the, quote, Cinderella story, unquote, in various cultures around the world stems from the fact that this particular story has tremendous influence on people's assumptions about ethics and life's possibilities, especially for women. It is possible that these many interpretations fit together as pieces in one puzzle, rather than as competing interpretations giving different perspectives that enrich the story. So I find the critique of Bridgerton Season 4, Part 1 so gratuitous. This is a centuries-old story being adapted for today on a Netflix show. We know the tale, we just have to enjoy the retelling. In episode 2, we really get more insight into Sophie's life as a servant. Sophie's last name in the show was changed to reflect her heritage. Sophie Beckett from the book becomes Sophie Beck in the show. Also, there is no character of Alfie in the book, and I love that his character was created in the show as a confidant and a friend to Sophie. From the first pages of the book, we are made very aware that Sophie's father did leave a respectable dowry for her in his will, and that her stepmother Araminta left out all the important details when she told Sophie about his will. The book does not provide any origin story for Sophie's mother. The sweet scene where Sophie is spying on Benedict during his visit to Penwood House does not happen in the book. Actually, Araminta orders that Sophie be locked in her shoe closet during this visit. Araminta is actually even more villainous in the book than she is in the show. Also, in the book, Sophie is the one who steals Araminta's fake shoe clips, whereas in the show they had Posey kind of give her the shoe clips. My favorite part of the book and the show is Sophie and Benedict's time at my cottage. But there's a huge difference between what happens in the book and in the show. In the book, Benedict actually has a serious case of the flu at my cottage, whereas in the show, he was injured and cut on his side during the struggle when he saves Sophie from Philip Cavender. I'm glad they changed this because I don't think the seriousness of his condition would have really translated on screen if it were a flu. A cut makes it visually more severe. In the book, Benedict gives Sophie some of his own clothing to wear while they are at my cottage, and later she wears Mrs. Crabtree's old dress. I prefer the show's choice in giving her an out-of-season cute dress of one of the Bridgerton sisters to wear, especially because Sophie does not have many costume changes in the show. She is in her maid uniform for a lot of the season. Also, in the book, Benedict and Sophie have many more intimate moments at my cottage. She kisses him when he asks her to in a delirious fever. He calls her all the time and wants her around while he is recovering from his fever, but not as a servant, just to be around him. He also realizes as a patient during the time at my cottage that he is very attracted to Sophie. The background details of why Benedict goes for this swim in the lake is actually explained in the book. It's because Benedict needed to cool down after being around Sophie, if you get what I'm saying. They do share a kiss after he catches her spying on him at the lake, but in the book it is at this point that he asks her to come back to London with him and to be with him. Sophie then responds in the book, "You want me to be your mistress?" In the book, Sophie does not want to go back to London, and Benedict from the book basically blackmails her by telling her that he will lie to a magistrate and say that she stole from him. So her consequences would be hanging or being sent to Australia, but what he would request is that she be released into his custody. Benedict in the book is quite ruthless and kind of horrible at times. For a lot of the book, he basically tries to seduce Sophie and wear her down into becoming his mistress. Also, it's explained that he does not want to let Sophie go in the book because he felt like he let the lady in silver go, and he didn't want to make the same mistake twice. He's very angry in the book when she refuses him, and the show makes Benedict a little less ruthless and much more respectful towards Sophie. In this way, he's more palatable to an audience, but he does have his moments in part 2 where we see a little bit of the book Benedict appear. Episode 4 and episode 5 deals with the, quote, "be my mistress," unquote, question. Sophie is adamant that she will not be a mistress and calls a mistress a, quote, glorified courtesan, unquote, and says that as a maid she is respectable. Although Sophie has moral reasons why she does not want to be a mistress, there is another element that is alluded to in both the show and the book. That is the lack of security of mistresses back then. This was best depicted with Sienna and Anthony in season 1. Anthony, if we remember, was totally obsessed with Sienna, his mistress, who was an opera singer, but when he ends things with her and is quite abrupt with it, she responds and says, quote, "You said you would always protect me. You promised to care for me, my lord, and now what shall I do?" Unquote. And Anthony responds, quote, "You shall leave." Ouch. This is more the reality of what mistresses faced, and we have an example of it in history. Let's discuss the story of Hariette Wilson, the most famous mistress of the Regency era. During the Regency era, it was fashionable for gentlemen to be seen in the company of popular courtesans. It was also an accepted practice for men to be open and social with their mistresses among other men. Hariette Wilson was just a child of 15 years old when she became a mistress to the Earl of Craven. In her memoir, Hariette did not describe her life as a kept mistress as romantic. In fact, she wrote that she disliked the Earl of Craven. Quote, "We never suited nor understood each other. With Craven, cotton nightcap and all, it was death. He never once made me laugh, nor said anything to please me," unquote. When Lord Craven was told by others that Hariette was seen talking to another gentleman, he told Hariette that she immediately needed to leave. As a mistress, Hariette was not allowed to attend social events of London high society. When Hariette was in a relationship with another gentleman, she wrote, "My comforts were not considered. I lived in extreme poverty while he contrived to enjoy all the luxuries of life and suffered me to pass my dreary evenings alone, while he frequented balls, masquerades, etc. Secure of my constancy, he was satisfied. Not I. I felt that I deserved better from him. Soon after, he quit town for a few weeks, and I was left alone in London, without money, or at any rate with very little. Thereafter, Hariette became a kept mistress to a duke. In her 30s, she put pen to paper, setting out her witty observations regarding the men that she interacted with throughout her life as a courtesan and mistress. This is actually the cover page of Hariette Wilson's memoir that now forms a part of the historical society chronicles of the time. Although academics claim that Hariette did exaggerate many incidents in her memoir, the reviews from her contemporaries of the time referred to her overall memoir as, quote, "pretty correct on the whole," unquote. The life of a kept mistress of the Regency era cannot be romanticized. The main reason why Hariette wrote a memoir in her 30s was because the gentleman who had promised to take care of her financially as she got older failed to do so. In the book Violet Bridgerton, Benedict's mother is the one to explain to Benedict that he will be giving up a lot if he goes ahead and marries outside of his class by marrying Sophie, but she does remain very supportive of Benedict and his choice. The show gave this storyline much higher stakes, with both Anthony and Violet being very realistic with Benedict regarding his relationship with Sophie. Also, Violet in the book is still mourning the death of her husband, whereas in the show she's given a new romantic partner. And I think giving her a romantic partner makes sense this season because she can empathize with Benedict more regarding the rigid standards of society versus the want to be happy. Also, there is no new Lord and Lady Penwood, aka Cressida Cowper, in the book. This is completely created by and for the show. Episode 7 dealt with the death of John Kilmartin and the theme of loss and grief. But what was really heartbreaking to me was when Francesca had to undergo the invasive medical examination to determine if she was pregnant. Unfortunately, it reminded me of a real life incident that happened in Victorian history, and I want to talk about it with you guys. I picked up this book a while back. It's titled Victorians Undone, Tales of the Flesh in the Age of Decorum by Catherine Hughes. I would definitely recommend this book. It was a fascinating read. And yes, this is what I like to read in my spare time. In this book, there is a story of a woman named Lady Flora Hastings, who was a lady in waiting to Queen Victoria's mother. The young Queen Victoria hated Lady Flora Hastings without any real cause, and when the unwed Lady Flora's stomach began to swell at court, the young queen and her supporters spread the vicious rumor that the unwed Lady Flora was pregnant. Queen Victoria banned her from her court until she submitted to a medical examination. These rumors were so damaging to Lady Flora's reputation and to her family's reputation that she had to consent to undergo a medical examination to disprove them. Francesca's experience would have been very similar to what is described in this book regarding Lady Flora's real-life experience. In 1839, a medical examination was ordered, and 2 different male doctors inspected Lady Flora in what was a terribly humiliating experience for her. According to Lady Flora, the examination was rough, prolonged, and painful. Lady Flora never truly recovered from the invasive procedure and was a virgin.
In the 19th century, most upper-class women, indeed most women, would reckon to get through life without exposing their, quote, person, unquote, to anyone except their husband and perhaps a midwife. Single women could avoid even this. The whole business of intimate physical examinations for medical purposes was obscene, with the male doctor using either his, quote, touch, unquote, or a speculum for the procedure. In the case of Lady Flora, the former was used. According to the Lancet Medical Journal of the time, this procedure would have inevitably affected a woman's, quote, virtue, unquote, as set out in the journal, quote, the female who has been subjected to such treatment is not the same person in delicacy and purity as she was before, unquote. Yes, this was in a medical journal.
After being declared not pregnant, a pamphlet in defense of Lady Flora's reputation was published by her relatives titled, quote, a victim of scandal, unquote. Lady Flora died from a liver tumor a few months later at the age of 33. That explained her protruding belly. Before her death, Lady Flora wrote to her uncle and implied that players in the Queen's immediate circle started the rumor that she was pregnant. The letter was published in a newspaper. The bad press turned the public against the young Queen Victoria. This incident with Lady Flora would haunt the Queen for many years. In the show, Benedict discovers Sophie's identity as the lady in the silver dress because of her necklace and her glove. In the book, it's very different. He actually sees Sophie playing a game with the children called Blind Man's Bluff, and in it she wears a mask over her face to search for the children. When Benedict sees her in a mask, he realizes that she was the woman at the masquerade ball, and I actually prefer the show's approach. The final episode was done much better than what happens in the book as well. In the book, most of the events relating to Araminta and her accusations of Sophie being a thief and stealing her shoe clips happens in the jail. But in the show, they move the entire drama to a courtroom and then to the Queen's ball. Also, using the Queen's approval as a way to ensure Sophie's acceptance into London high society was just a much more interesting plan to tie everything together. In the book, Sophie just finally knows that her father did leave her a dowry in his will. There's no Queen's approval or input. But Sophie and Benedict's steamy bath scene does happen exactly the same as in the show and the book, so good for them and good for her. I do think where the show made a major error was in revealing Penelope as Lady Whistledown in season 3. Her storyline didn't really make sense at some points during the season because everyone knew who she was, and I'm glad that they corrected this and introduced a new and mysterious unknown Lady Whistledown. I also wanted to mention the amazing representation, a couple in the earlier episodes communicating in sign language during a promenade. Also, the character of Hazel, played by actress Gracie McGonigal, is an amazing addition to the cast. She had a storyline as Sophie's friend with a possible love interest in the footman. The actress was born with a limb difference, and this is exactly why I love Bridgerton. It's such an inclusive show, and that's one of my favorite things about it. Finally, I absolutely adored the ending of this season. In the book, we end with Sophie and Benedict having kids, and Sophie being a part of Lady Whistledown Society Papers. But I think the show did much better with giving Sophie her moment at the Queen's Ball, where she dances without shame or fear with Benedict. It was such a great end to her story, especially because she wanted to belong to this world. It's such a lovely bookend from episode 1, where she just wanted for one night to attend a ball and see the world which she could have been a part of. I actually got chills when the wedding scene at my cottage was happening, and especially when the focus panned to the final completed portrait of Sophie as the lady in silver, and when the camera pans to Benedict Bridgerton's signature on the artwork. It is the perfect end to this story because that is the work of art that he finally made sure to complete. Oh, it was just so good. I want to know, did you enjoy season 4? I also want to highlight that the music was very good this season. The cover of Usher and Pitbull's DJ Got Us Falling in Love in the first episode. Then in the last episode, Take Me Back to the Night We Met. What an amazing cover. What an amazing contrast. I actually want to read the other Bridgerton books and do reviews like this, including historical anecdotes. Let me know if you guys would like to see that as well. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.